When did the Trade Marks Act 1999 come into force? If your answer is 1999, you have already lost a mark. The act was enacted on December 30th, 1999, but it did not come into force until September 15th, 2003. This specific 4-year gap is one of the most frequent points of error in the Trademarks Agent exam. Welcome to Lecture D1. This is the foundational blueprint for your 2027 Trademarks Agent exam preparation. We are mapping the structural core of the Act, every critical definition in Section 2, and the exact legal boundaries of different trademarks. To pass this exam, you must rely on the exact statutory dates and rigid definitional boundaries provided in the text, rather than general legal assumptions. The 1999 Act, officially Act 47 of 1999, replaced the outdated 1958 legislation. India executed this modernization protocol to comply with our 1994 TRIPS obligations. This structural diagram shows the 5 key upgrades introduced in 1999. Service marks became protectable, well-known marks gained statutory recognition, assignment without goodwill was permitted, and both collective marks and certification marks received their own dedicated chapters. The Annex, Chapter 4A for the Madrid Protocol, was added later. Commit this timeline to memory. Enactment, December 30th, 1999. In force, September 15th, 2003. Madrid Protocol accession, July 8th, 2013. The IPAB abolition, 2021. And the Jan Vishwas amendments taking effect, August 1st, 2024. Territorially, the Act extends to the whole of India. A registered mark grants national protection. Administratively, the system is run by the Controller General of Patents, Designs, and Trademarks, the CGPDTM, operating under the DPIIT within the Ministry of Commerce. This map illustrates the administrative distinctions you must distinguish. The principal trademarks registry is located in Mumbai, supported by branches in Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, and Ahmedabad. By contrast, the Geographical Indications Registry is based exclusively in Chennai. Knowing exactly when the Act applies and the specific office that administers it forms the baseline for procedural questions. We turn now to Section 2, Subsection 1, Clause ZB. This is the single most heavily tested definition in the entire Act, the definition of a trademark. A trademark requires 3 mandatory pillars. Pillar 1, it must meet the statutory definition of a mark. Pillar 2, it must be capable of graphical representation. The public must be able to search the register and see exactly what is protected. Pillar 3, it must be capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of others. Lock in this exact sequence using the acronym MGD: Mark, Graphical, Distinguishing. If any single pillar fails, the registration fails. To satisfy the first pillar, we look to Section 2, Subsection 1, Clause M. It is an inclusive definition listing devices, brands, headings, labels, tickets, names, signatures, words, letters, and numerals. Crucially, it expressly includes the shape of goods, packaging, and combinations of colors. The inclusive wording of S2(1)M, combined with the rigorous MGD test, provides the legal scaffolding that allows non-traditional marks to exist in modern Indian IP law today. Let's run through the remaining high-yield definitions in Section 2. Deceptively similar under Clause H requires a specific test. Would an average consumer with imperfect recollection be likely to be deceived or confused? A well-known trademark under Clause ZG requires the mark to be known to a substantial segment of the public, such that its use on unrelated goods suggests a connection to the original owner. A collective mark under Clause G distinguishes goods of members of an association. There is a specific statutory exclusion here. It expressly excludes a partnership under the Indian Partnership Act 1932. A certification trademark under Clause E certifies origin, material, or quality. The statutory bar, the certifier must not trade in the goods they certify. This table highlights a common point of confusion. A registered user under Clause X is registered under Section 49 and holds the statutory right to sue for infringement. A mere permitted user under Clause R uses the mark by written consent, but cannot sue. Rounding out S2, we have service under Clause Y, covering commercial sectors from banking to construction, and associated trademarks under Clause B, which are nearly resembling marks by the same proprietor that must be assigned as a whole block. Mixing up the specific rights of these entities, particularly the gap between a registered and permitted user, will be the focus of scenario-based questions. We see conventional word marks constantly. The Tata mark on these trucks protects the text itself, regardless of the font or design. Composite marks combine elements. The Amul registration protects both the specific word stylization and the girl mascot as a single unified asset. Moving to non-traditional assets, shape marks protect three-dimensional forms, like the distinctive contour of the Coca-Cola bottle. Sound marks, like the ICICI Bank jingle, require precise documentation to pass the MGD test. The applicant must submit musical notation alongside the audio file. For decades, smell marks were considered practically impossible to register in India because scents could not be adequately drawn or mapped on paper. That hurdle was overcome in November 2025 with the acceptance of an olfactory mark for Sumitomo Rubber Industries. This 7-axis radar chart shows the scientific model developed by IIIT Allahabad to bypass the S2 1ZB graphical representation hurdle. By decomposing the rose scent applied to their tires across 7 specific axes, Sumitomo provided a scientific map of the scent. The registry's acceptance demonstrates that the qualitative requirement for graphical representation can be met using technical precision. When a scientific model can define the boundaries of a scent on paper, that scent can transition from a theoretical concept to a registered asset. All marks are measured against the distinctiveness spectrum, which helps determine their inherent legal strength. At the very top are fanciful marks, which are entirely invented words like KODAK. Just below are arbitrary marks, real words applied to unrelated goods like Apple for computers. In the middle, we find suggestive marks, which hint at a product's qualities but require imagination, and descriptive marks, which directly describe the product. At the absolute bottom are generic terms. These are the common names for the goods themselves, and they are never registrable under any circumstance. This staircase maps the hierarchy. Remember FASDG, fast and smart dogs growl. Fanciful, arbitrary, suggestive, descriptive, generic. Descriptive marks face absolute refusal, but under the Section 9, Subsection 1 proviso, they can survive if they have acquired a distinctive character through extensive prior use. Once a mark's distinctiveness is established, it is filed under Section 7 using the NICE classification system. The goods and services are divided into 45 classes, classes 1 through 34 for goods and 35 through 45 for services. Ultimately, successful registration depends on correctly identifying where a mark sits on this spectrum and ensuring its use aligns with the specific commercial classes it claims. Under Section 18, any person claiming to be the proprietor of a mark can apply for registration. The application requires one of two legal bases. The mark is either already in actual use, or it is proposed to be used. This Venn diagram separates the legal terminology from common speech. A trademark legally identifies the source of goods or services. A trade name identifies the corporate business entity itself. A brand is a broad marketing concept regarding goodwill. Exam questions are written using strict statutory definitions. Avoid using marketing terminology in place of the legal categories required by the Act. Let's lock this in right now. We are going to run a rapid-fire drill on the absolute rules. Question 1. On what exact date did the TM Act 1999 come into force? September 15, 2003. Question 2. What are the 3 pillars of S21ZB trademark? Mark, graphical representation, capable of distinguishing. MGD. Question 3. Where is the principal trademarks registry located? Mumbai. Question 4. How many classes exist in the NICE classification system? 45. 34 for goods, 11 for services. Question 5. Can a partnership firm own a collective mark? No, it is expressly excluded. Question 6. Between a registered user and a permitted user, who can sue for infringement? A registered user can, a permitted user cannot. Question 7. What is the strongest tier on the distinctiveness spectrum? Fanciful marks. Question 8. When can a generic term be registered? Never. That concludes Lecture D1. In Lecture D2, we tackle the absolute grounds for refusal under Section 9 and the specific shape mark bars that cannot be cured by prior use. Subscribe and stay focused. This is Patentworld-ai. Master these definitions now. They are the only tools that will get you through the complex refusal scenarios in our next class.